Hi, welcome to Lanas y Ovillos. My name is Alba, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this baby cardigan. This cardigan is made with the reverse rib stitch. It's really easy to make, you only have to repeat 8 rows. The construction of the cardigan is also really easy, you will see it on the video. You can find the written pattern of this size and other sizes in my website. You can find the link on the description below. And if you are new in this channel, if you like this video, remember to subscribe and click on the bell to receive the notifications of all my new videos. Let's go now with the step-by-step and the materials that I used for this size. To make the cardigan of the size the 3 to 6 months, I used less than 150 grams of Becky Petite. You can also use the Merino DK from the brand also Casasol of this yarn. Here you can see the specifications of this material. I used 4.5 millimeters knitting needles. I used circular needles, but you can use straight needles. I also used scissors and a tapestry needle. The size is 24 centimeters the width of the body, 28 centimeters from the bottom to the top, 32 centimeters from the center to the sleeve, 7 centimeters the width of the sleeve, 8 centimeters here, and 10 centimeters the neck. Remember that you can find the written pattern of this size and other sizes from newborn to 2 years in my website. You can find the link on the description below. For this size, start casting on 44 stitches. 44 stitches. Make a slip knot. And cast on 44 stitches. You can use the way to cast on that you prefer. Cast on 44 stitches. Once you have the 44 stitches, you have to start working the reverse rib stitch. To make the reverse rib stitch, you have to start with a row with the knit stitch. Make 1 knit stitch on each stitch. 1 knit stitch to the end. Row number 2. In my case, I will take the edge stitch on each row and then make 1 row of purl stitches. One row of purl stitches to the end. Row number 3 of the reverse rib stitch, 1 knit stitch to the end, knit stitches to the end. 1 knit stitch on each stitch to the end on the row number 3. Row number 4. Purl stitches on all the stitches. Work 1 purl stitch on each stitch on the row number 4 of the reverse rib stitch. On the row number 5, you have to make again a row with the purl stitch. 1 row with the purl stitch on the row number 5. On the row number 6, you have to make 1 knit stitch in all the stitches. 1 knit stitch on each stitch to the end on the row number 6. On the row number 7, 1 purl stitch on each stitch, 1 purl stitch on each stitch to the end of the row. On the row number 8, again 1 knit stitch on each stitch, 1 knit stitch to the end. And you have to repeat now the row number 1, making again 1 row with the knit stitch. 1 row with the knit stitch. This is the row number 1 again. So you have to row number 1 knit stitches, row number 2 purl stitches, row number 3 knit stitches, row number 4 purl stitches, row number 5 purl stitches, row number 6 knit stitches, row number 7 purl stitches, and row number 8 knit stitches. This is what you have to repeat to the end of the cardigan. Once you have 19 centimeters of the reverse rib stitch, we have to start making the increases on the sleeves. We have to increase 30 stitches, but we are not going to increase the 30 stitches at the same time. We have to start. You have to cast on 10 stitches at one side, cast on 10 stitches with the yarn. In my case, this is a row with knit stitch, so you have to knit all those 10 stitches knit the 10 stitches then knit the stitches that you have on the needles, the part of the body, and once you are at the end, you have to cast on again 10 stitches to start the increases of the other sleeve. So cast on 10 stitches, and work those 10 stitches. In this case I have to make purl stitches, so work the 10 stitches with the purl stitch and continue working the stitches of the body and the 10 stitches of the other sleeve, also with the purl stitch. Once you are at the end of the other sleeve, you have to cast on 10 more stitches. So cast on 10 stitches. And in this case, I have to work a row with the knit stitch, so work one knit stitch on each stitch. To the end, making the 20 stitches that you have on this sleeve the stitches of the body and the 10 stitches that you have on the other sleeve. Once you finish this row, you have to cast on again 10 stitches to have 20 stitches on this sleeve, and you have to continue working those stitches. In this case, I have to make the row with the purl stitch, so purl all those stitches and all the 10 stitches of this sleeve. And the other 10 stitches of this sleeve, the stitches of the body and the 20 stitches of the other sleeve. Once you arrive at the end of the other sleeve, you have to cast on the last 10 stitches to have the 30 stitches of the sleeve. Once you have the 30 stitches, you have to work those 30 stitches. Remember, working the reverse rib stitch. Work the stitches of the body and the 20 stitches of the other sleeve. And now you have to cast on the last 10 stitches of the second sleeve to arrive at the 30 stitches of the sleeve. Once you have the 10 stitches, you have to continue working the reverse rib stitch on the following 7 centimeters. Once you work 7 centimeters, now you have to place a stitch marker on the center of the cardigan. You have 30 stitches on each sleeve and 44 stitches on the body. So you have to place a stitch on a stitch marker in between of the stitch number 22 of the body. Then count 8 stitches to one side, place a stitch marker, and 8 stitches to the other side, place another stitch marker. You have now to continue working the reverse rib stitch to arrive at the first stitch marker. Now you have to bind off 16 stitches. Remember how you have to bind off. Work one stitch, work the following stitch and pass the first stitch over the second stitch. You bind off one stitch, repeat one more time, work the following stitch, pass the first stitch over the second stitch, and this is how you have to bind off 16 stitches. In my case here I have 15 stitches. This is the stitch number 16. You have to remove the stitch marker, bind off one more stitch to have the 16 stitches, and continue working the reverse rib stitch to the end. Now you have to work only one part of the cardigan. You have to leave those stitches on this side on the needles. You can use a safety pin if you prefer. I will leave the stitches on the needle. Then you have to start working only those stitches of one side. Now you have to continue working those stitches of only one side, working the reverse rib stitch. In this case I have to work a row with the purl stitch, work to the last stitch before the neck. Remember, leave the stitches of the other side on the needle. And continue working the reverse rib stitch to have 5 centimeters. To have 5 more centimeters. Once you have the 5 centimeters, make the reverse rib stitch to the center, to the part of the neck. and you have to cast on 12 stitches to make the front. Once you have the 12 stitches, you have to continue working the reverse rib stitch on those 12 stitches. To the end of the row, to the end of the sleeves. Continue working the reverse rib stitch, and in one of the fronts, in my case I will make it now, you have to make the buttonholes. To make the buttonholes, in my case I will work 3 knit stitches, then knit 2 together, yarn over, and continue working the knit stitches to the end. On the following row, you have to, in my case, I have to work the purl stitch row. You have to work the purl stitch to arrive where you have the buttonhole, then work the stitches normally. The yarn over, you have to purl the yarn over and work the stitches normally. I will make buttonholes every 4 or 5 centimeters. Remember, you have to make the buttonholes only in one side of the front and from the top to the bottom part of the cardigan. Continue working the reverse rib stitch to have a couple of centimeters to have the same size the sleeve on one side and on the other side. Now, once you have the same stitches of the sleeves on this side, you have to bind off the 30 stitches. As we made on the part where you cast on the stitches, you have to bind off, in this case, only 10 stitches, so bind off the 10 stitches. Continue to the end of this row with a reverse rib stitch. You are at the part of the front, you have to keep this edge straight, so turn, continue working the reverse rib stitch to the end. And now you have on the following row to bind off again 10 stitches. So turn again, bind off 10 stitches. and continue working the reverse rib stitch to the end. Turn, continue working all those stitches to the end, and once you are at the end, turn again and bind off the last 10 stitches of the sleeve. Once you bind off the 30 stitches, you made the 30 decreases, you have to continue working the reverse rib stitch to have the same size of the front that you have on the back. In this case 19 centimeters. Remember that you have to make buttonholes on one of the sides of the front part. And once you are at the end, turn again and bind off. You have to work the other side of the cardigan. You have to start working the reverse rib stitch on the part of the neck. Remember that you worked this row from this side to the other side, so you have to start working the first row here at the center where you have the neck. So continue working the reverse rib stitch and repeat the same that you made on the other side. You have to work the stitches of the neck, then cast on the stitches of the front, make the decreases of the sleeves and work the front part. Remember here, if you made the buttonholes on the first part, you don't have to make buttonholes now. Now you only have to, if you want, you can block the cardigan. To block the cardigan you have to wet it with some water, and if you want you can add some natural soap and leave it with blocking pins to let it dry. And once it's dry, you have to take a tapestry needle and sew the sides of the cardigan and the bottom part of the sleeves on one side
and repeat the same on the other side, the sides of the cardigan with the bottom part of the other sleeve.
Well, that's all. I hope you like it. Remember to subscribe and click on the bell to receive the notifications of my new videos. Remember that you can find this pattern, this written pattern, in my website with this size and other sizes. You can find also in my website hundreds of free knitting, crochet and amigurumi patterns. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.